Months and months and months.
You got to open that up all the way. What is that?
Huh?
What is that? No. Pull it out. What
Imagine this, a late-night traffic stop in a quiet Maryland suburb. The air is thick, humid, and heavy with the kind of stillness that makes you think nothing out of the ordinary could possibly happen. But in the next few minutes, what begins as a routine police stop will unravel into one of the most disturbing discoveries in recent memory. Something so vile that even the most seasoned officers will find themselves physically sick, trembling, and struggling to contain their emotions. Before we dive into this harrowing true story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into cases that shock, disturb, and haunt the public conscience. And if you're watching right now, prepare yourself. This is not a story you'll easily forget. It's just after 11 p.m. On July 28, 2021, in Essex, Maryland, the roads are dimly lit, the streetlights flickering faintly over stretches of asphalt. An officer from the Baltimore County Police Department spots a vehicle traveling over the posted speed limit, just enough to warrant a stop. He signals the driver to pull over. A black sedan slows to the curb. Behind the wheel sits 33-year-old Nicole Michelle Johnson, a woman with an expression that's hard to read, part exhaustion, part impatience. In the passenger seat, a woman she calls BB stares straight ahead, silent. The officer approaches calmly. "How you doing tonight?" he asks. "Fine," Nicole answers, her voice almost too casual. He asks for her license and registration. She hands over a state-issued ID, but something about the interaction feels off. The officer explains why she was pulled over, doing well over 35 mph in a 35 zone. Nicole claims she thought she was only going a little over 40. The officer returns to his cruiser to run the details. That's when the first red flag appears. The vehicle isn't even registered. The plates are fake, and Nicole? She doesn't have a valid driver's license. He informs her the car will have to be towed. Nicole asks if she can remove her belongings before it's taken away. She steps to the back of the car, opens the trunk, and reveals several large, overstuffed bags. At this point, the scene still feels routine, mundane even. Just another traffic stop, but it won't stay that way for long. As the officer begins issuing citations, Nicole rambles, explaining she's been living in the car with her kids. Her tone shifts, her words becoming strangely fatalistic. She says things like, "Tonight's my last night," and "Watch, tomorrow you'll see me on the news." The officer hears the words but doesn't yet grasp the chilling weight they carry. Backup arrives and the first officer pulls a colleague aside. "Come here," he says quietly. "See if you smell what I smell, not drugs, something dead." The second officer walks to the vehicle, inhaling cautiously. His face hardens. The smell is unmistakable, sickly sweet, clinging and rancid. It's not the scent of old laundry or forgotten food, it's decay. Nicole is asked what's inside the bags. She insists it's just dirty clothes and blankets, nothing more. But the smell is too strong to ignore. The officers press her to open them fully. She hesitates, mumbling excuses about bugs and mess. The officers start tearing through the layers themselves. Plastic trash bags knotted tightly, one after another, as if someone had gone to great lengths to hide whatever was inside. Each cut of the knife releases a fresh wave of the foul stench, forcing the officers to pull their shirts over their noses. Finally, deep beneath the layers, they uncover a black suitcase. Nicole tries to downplay it. "It's just blankets," she says, but her voice shakes. The suitcase is unzipped. One officer freezes, his stomach lurching. He jerks back and orders Nicole to turn around. In seconds, she's on the ground, handcuffed, still protesting. "It's not mine. What did I do?" Her passenger, BB, is crying, begging the police not to arrest her. She insists she had nothing to do with anything. But the officers aren't in a mood for discussion. They're too busy trying to process what they've just seen. The scene is chaos. One officer barks orders, "Gloves, masks, everybody mask up now." Another, pale and shaken, mutters under his breath, "It's a baby." Even the most hardened members of the force are struggling to stay composed. Some step away to catch their breath, hands on their knees, eyes unfocused. Others simply stare, frozen. The discovery is as horrifying as it is surreal. In the suitcase is the small, lifeless body of a child. Wrapped tightly in blankets, the skin pale and shrunken, insects crawling over the fabric. And as horrifying as that is, the night is far from over. Back at the car, the officers continue searching. The trunk is a macabre puzzle, every layer revealing something worse than the last. Buried beneath bags and trash, they find another container, this time a large black and yellow plastic bin. Inside lies something else, wrapped in more blankets and plastic. The officers know before they even open it what they're about to see, but confirmation still hits like a punch to the gut. Inside are the aged remains of another child, 2 children, hidden, left to decompose in the heat of a Maryland summer. The tow truck is dismissed. This car is no longer just a traffic stop, it's a crime scene. And Nicole Johnson, who minutes ago was trying to talk her way out of fake tags, is now at the center of an investigation that will haunt everyone involved. Both women are taken into custody. At the precinct, Nicole alternates between sullen silence and bursts of rambling, defensive chatter. BB appears confused, claiming she doesn't understand why she's there. Detectives note almost immediately that BB has significant cognitive impairments and appears to have no knowledge of what was in the trunk. They begin the process of arranging for her release into her mother's care. Nicole, on the other hand, has a lot to answer for. What the detectives don't yet know is that the horrors in that trunk span more than a year in the making. That the children, 7-year-old Joshin Marie James Johnson and 5-year-old Larry Darnell O'Neill, were her niece and nephew, left in her care 2 years earlier. That they had never been enrolled in school, had never seen a doctor in Maryland, and, perhaps most damningly, had never even been reported missing. The questions now are devastatingly simple. How did they die? And why had Nicole been driving around with their bodies for months? The answers will be even more disturbing than the discovery itself. At the station, Nicole sits in an interview room, her hands cuffed, her body shifting uncomfortably in the chair. Across the table, a detective leans forward, his expression calm but unreadable. The air feels heavy, not just from the smell that still clings to her clothes, but from the weight of the questions that hang unspoken between them. She starts to talk, halting at first, then with a kind of defensive energy. She claims she didn't know what was in the trunk smelled so bad. She says she thought it might be a dead animal somewhere in the car. She rambles about moving from hotel to hotel, living in the vehicle, keeping the windows down to let the smell escape. But detectives aren't buying it. The layers of plastic bags, the careful wrapping. This wasn't the result of ignorance. This was concealment. Nicole's words drift into strange territory, painting herself as the one who took better care of the kids than their mother, her sister, ever did. She claims that when they came to live with her, the children were dirty, neglected, and in need of stability. She insists she fed them, kept them clothed, tried to give them structure. But when asked their birthdays, she can't remember. When asked to spell her niece's name, she gets it wrong. Outside the room, officers quietly update each other. The bodies are in advanced stages of decomposition. The little girl appears to be about 6 years old, but her weight, just 18 pounds, suggests severe malnourishment. The boy is similarly small, only 21 pounds. Forensics experts will later say it would have taken months of insufficient nutrition for them to become that underweight. Nicole, however, pushes back on the suggestion they were starved. They ate all the time, she insists. They ate everything. But the photographs, the autopsy reports, and the sheer frailty of their remains tell a different story. Detectives start at the beginning. "Tell us about Joshin," one says. "Tell us what happened." Nicole's gaze drops to the table. Her voice is quieter now. "It was an accident," she says. "I gave her a beating." The words hang in the air like a bomb. She explains that her niece had been getting into trouble, taking things from the refrigerator, misbehaving, causing problems for her younger brother. Nicole says she tried to let it slide at first, but the behavior continued. One day, she says, she lost her temper. She admits to hitting the girl. Not punching, she clarifies, just slapping, hitting her body. But then the girl fell. Nicole can't or won't recall exactly how she fell. She thinks she hit her head on the hard floor. The next part comes out in fragments. The child lying still, not speaking or crying. Nicole trying to push on her chest, hard, as if she could jolt her back to life. Then she laid the little girl in bed and stayed beside her. By morning, she was gone. Nicole says she didn't know what to do. She claims she was scared, of the police, of losing everything, of being blamed. So she put the girl's body into a suitcase, and she kept it. Not for hours, not for days, for over a year. All the while, she continued texting her sister, pretending the child was alive. In one exchange, her sister even thanked her for taking care of them so well. Nicole replied as if nothing had happened. Detectives press her for details about Larry, the younger child. She says he was still with her after his sister's death, that he didn't want to go anywhere else. She describes how one day they were playing when something, she can't remember what, hit his leg. She thought it might have struck a main artery. She noticed blood on his clothes. She says he started getting drowsy, his head drooping, his voice small. "Honey, can you lay me down?" he asked her. She put him in the back seat of the car and went to smoke a cigarette. When she turned around, he wasn't moving. She doesn't give a clear explanation for what caused his injury. She just says she panicked. Eventually, she placed his body in a large plastic bin, wrapping it the same way she had wrapped his sister's. She kept both children in the trunk as she moved from place to place, the stench growing with every passing week. Investigators learned the deaths happened months apart. Joshin in May 2020, Larry in May 2021. 2 summers of heat, 2 winters of cold, 2 long, terrible stretches of time where no one outside Nicole's immediate world even knew they were gone. And perhaps the most haunting detail? No one ever reported them missing. Not their mother, not other family members, not neighbors. It's as if these children simply vanished from the world, and only a routine traffic stop could bring their truth to light. While Nicole spins her narrative of being overwhelmed, abandoned, and forced into caring for the kids, detectives can't help but notice the contradictions. She claims to have loved them, but hotel staff recall her screaming at the children through thin walls. Witnesses describe the girl crying for her to stop. Autopsy reports confirm bruises consistent with long-term physical abuse. Back at the crime scene, the officers still posted near the vehicle are shaken. Some have children the same age. Some can't even bring themselves to look at the bodies again. One officer admits quietly to another, "I just keep thinking about my daughter turning 5 this weekend." The forensic team works methodically, photographing, documenting, sealing evidence. The air around the car is suffocating, the smell impossible to block out even with masks. Every time the trunk opens, it's like the crime itself is exhaling into the night, forcing everyone to confront the reality of what they've found. As Nicole's interview continues, she shifts between cooperation and defiance. She wants to call her mother before giving any more details. She insists her sister was a bad mom and that she was the better option. She talks about how she used to yell at her sister for not feeding or washing the kids properly. But when detectives ask why she never reached out to Child Protective Services, she changes the subject. In another room, Bibi sits in silence, her hands fidgeting. She doesn't seem to understand the severity of what's happened. When officers ask if she wants to go to the hospital for her sore knee, she initially agrees, until they tell her she'll have to be shackled for the trip. She changes her mind instantly. Hours pass. Detectives collect Nicole's belongings, noting small but haunting details. 2 rose teddy bears, 1 pink and 1 blue, with ribbons that read, "Always and Forever." They wonder if they were meant as memorials for the children, or something else entirely. But what stands out the most is what isn't there. No children's clothing, no toys, no school books. No sign that Joshin or Larry had been living like normal kids. The interviews will stretch into the early hours of the morning. Eventually, detectives will leave the rooms with more questions than answers. The picture forming in their minds is one of prolonged neglect, hidden abuse, and deaths that could have been prevented. And yet, there's still more to uncover. The investigation will reveal patterns in Nicole's movements, the lies she told to keep family at bay, and the strange, almost casual way she carried on life with 2 lifeless children in the back of her car. But the final truth, the timeline of their last moments, will be pieced together from fragments. Her partial confessions, witness statements, forensic reports, and every piece will be worse than the last. The interview room feels colder now. Nicole sits hunched over, rubbing her wrists where the handcuffs have dug into her skin. The detective leans back, watching her closely. He's heard countless suspects try to paint themselves as misunderstood, as victims of circumstance. But this case, this is different. The details are slowly knitting together into a picture so grim, it's hard to imagine any single person carrying the weight of it. Yet here she is, calm one moment, defensive the next, weaving a narrative where she is both the caretaker and the victim. When asked why she never reached out for help, Nicole claims she didn't trust anyone. Not her family, not social services, not the police. "Nobody's there when you need them," she mutters. "Nobody helps you. You just do what you have to do." But what she had to do included living for months with the decomposing bodies of 2 children. Detectives start pushing harder. They remind her that her sister had reached out multiple times, sending money, checking on the children, asking to see them. In fact, text messages from Nicole's phone show her sister repeatedly trying to arrange visits so the kids could meet their new sibling. Nicole either ignored those requests or pushed them off. She didn't really care. Nicole shrugs. They made her ask. She wasn't serious. The detective studies her face. "And when she did ask, you told her no." Nicole looks away. "I didn't tell her no. I didn't make it happen." Her voice trails off, but the silence is heavy. In that gap, the truth sits like a shadow between them. Back at the crime scene, investigators comb through every inch of the vehicle. The black suitcase and the yellow and black storage bin are sealed and taken to the medical examiner's office. The trunk itself is swabbed for trace evidence, though the heat and decomposition have left behind damage that no cleaning product will ever truly erase. One of the officers steps back, shaking his head. "This is the worst thing I've ever seen," he admits to a colleague. And I've been on some bad calls. In the examiner's lab, the remains are handled with care and precision. For Joshin, the autopsy is limited by the severe decomposition. Skin shrunken, muscles wasted, bones delicate. The comforter she was wrapped in contains a cigarette butt. Her body shows bruises consistent with blunt force trauma, but the exact cause of death can't be pinpointed. Still, the medical examiner rules it homicide, citing evidence of abuse and neglect. Larry's body is in a similar state. He is still wearing his Paw Patrol pajamas when he arrives at the lab. There are bruises on his legs and arms. The superficial cuts on his legs don't explain his death, but internal bleeding is found near his knee and elbow, suggesting trauma before death. Like his sister, his official cause of death can't be determined because of the decomposition. But again, the manner of death is classified as homicide. The most haunting revelation from the autopsy reports isn't just the injuries, it's their size. Both children weigh less than many toddlers. They are tiny for their ages, their frames fragile. Doctors conclude that only prolonged malnutrition could account for their low weights. When detectives confront Nicole with this, she becomes defensive. They weren't tiny, she insists. They ate all the time, all the time. She repeats it as if saying it enough will make it true. But the science is unforgiving, and so is the timeline. Detectives establish that Joshin likely died in May 2020. Larry died in May 2021. That means Nicole was living for over a year with one child's remains before adding another to the trunk. They also discover something else chilling. During that entire period, the children were invisible. They never appeared in any school enrollment records. They never saw a pediatrician. And no missing person report was ever filed for either of them. The truth, it seems, is that their world had been shrinking long before they died. From their mother's care to Nicole's custody, from hotel rooms to the inside of a car trunk, their lives had been reduced to silence. As the detectives press on, Nicole starts talking about the days after each death. She describes carrying on life as if nothing happened, traveling between cheap motels, occasionally staying with friends, sometimes sleeping in the car. She claims she didn't know what else to do. "I couldn't just leave them," she says, her voice catching slightly. "I couldn't." The detective doesn't let the moment slide. "You didn't leave them," he says. "But you didn't bury them. You didn't call for help. You kept them in your car." Nicole says nothing. In another room, Bibi's interview has stalled. Officers have determined she is mentally incapable of fully understanding the situation, and she will be released to her mother. Before leaving, she repeats over and over that she had nothing to do with it. By the next morning, the story has already started to circulate through the department. Officers talk quietly in corners, sharing their disbelief. Some are angry, others are simply numb. One veteran says he's been on the force for over 2 decades and never seen something so deeply unsettling. Not just the crime, but the fact that no one in the children's lives seemed to notice they were gone. The case is moving quickly now. Nicole is booked without bond. Word of the arrest spreads, and by the end of the day, local media is reporting the bare facts. A woman charged in connection with the deaths of 2 children found in the trunk of her car. The headlines can't capture the reality of what investigators have seen, but they are enough to spark outrage and horror among the public. Behind closed doors, prosecutors begin building the case. The charges are staggering: 14 counts, including first-degree child abuse resulting in death, second-degree child abuse, neglect of a minor, assault, failure to report the death of a minor, and unauthorized disposal of a body. The weight of the evidence is overwhelming. Nicole's partial confessions, the forensic reports, the witness statements, they all point in one direction. But the question that lingers, the one that haunts every detective who worked the case, is the same one that still has no answer. How does a life, 2 lives, vanish so completely that only a traffic stop can bring the truth to light? And perhaps more disturbingly, if Nicole hadn't been speeding that night in Essex, Maryland, would anyone have ever known? By the time the sun rises over Baltimore County, the case has already shifted from a local tragedy to a story that will soon grab national headlines. Reporters gather outside the precinct, cameras trained on the entrance, waiting for the moment Nicole Johnson will be let out in handcuffs. Inside, detectives push forward, piecing together every detail they can before the media frenzy begins. They map Nicole's movements over the past 2 years. Hotel stays, short-term rentals, stretches where she and the children lived entirely in her car. Each location adds weight to the question investigators can't shake. How did no one see this? The most troubling answer is also the simplest. No one was looking. The children's mother, Dashelle, had left them with Nicole in 2019. She told police she couldn't care for them at the time. She claimed she trusted her sister to do better. But court records and phone data show that even when she tried to check in, she was blocked or ignored. And yet, Dashiell's story is complicated. Detectives uncovered dozens of text messages between her and Nicole, some friendly, some tense. She sent money. She asked for updates. She asked for photos. Nicole gave excuses. They're sleeping. They're not here right now. Next weekend. The reality was far darker. In May 2020, when Joshin died, Dashiell had no idea. Nicole continued to send her messages as if nothing had happened. Even in April 2021, she texted her sister a thank you. Thank you for taking care of them so well. At that point, one child had been dead for nearly a year. By May 2021, when Larry died, Nicole didn't reach out for help then either. Instead, she placed him in a plastic storage bin, wedged him in the trunk beside his sister's suitcase, and drove on with life as if the car wasn't carrying the weight of two small graves. When pressed about those decisions in her interview, Nicole alternates between justification and denial. She says she was scared of the system. She says she couldn't just leave them somewhere. She insists she loved them, but admits she sometimes disciplined too hard. The detectives remain stone-faced. They've heard these refrains before, claims of love used to soften the reality of violence and neglect. But in this case, the facts are carved in bone. The autopsies leave little room for doubt. Multiple injuries, both fresh and healed, consistent with ongoing abuse, signs of prolonged malnutrition, a living environment stripped of anything resembling a normal childhood. The prosecution's path becomes clear. They will argue that these were not accidents, not tragic misfortunes, but the inevitable result of sustained abuse and neglect. As the investigation closes, Nicole is formally charged with 14 counts, the most serious being 2 counts of first-degree child abuse resulting in death. If convicted on all counts, she could spend the rest of her life in prison. Months pass. The headlines flare and fade, but for the detectives, the memory of that night in Essex doesn't dull. Some still talk about the moment the suitcase was unzipped, the smell, the silence that fell over the scene, the way hardened officers stepped back like they'd been punched. In August 2024, Nicole appears in court. Her demeanor is subdued but not remorseful. There are no tears when the prosecution reads out the names of the children. No visible reaction when the judge recites the charges. Under mounting evidence and facing the likelihood of a life sentence, Nicole pleads guilty to the 2 most serious charges: first-degree child abuse resulting in death. The other counts are dropped as part of the plea agreement. February 2025, sentencing day. The courtroom is silent as the judge takes his seat. Family members are present, though they sit apart, the tragedy having deepened existing rifts. Some refuse to look at Nicole. Others stare at her with eyes full of questions she will never answer. When the sentence is read, life in prison with all but 50 years suspended plus 5 years of supervised probation upon release, there is no gasp, no dramatic outburst. Just a quiet exhale like a chapter closing. 50 years. By the time Nicole Johnson walks free, if she ever does, the world will be unrecognizable. In the weeks that follow, the public's focus drifts to other headlines, other stories. But in Baltimore County, the shadow of this case lingers. Officers who worked that night in 2021 say they still catch phantom whiffs of that smell, decay clinging to memory long after it's gone from the air. The detectives keep their files neatly stored, knowing that even closed cases have a way of resurfacing in nightmares. And somewhere, 2 graves mark the final resting place of children whose lives ended long before their time. Children whose voices will never be heard again, except in the echoes of the people who failed to protect them. The saddest truth? Without that single traffic stop, without Nicole driving a little too fast down a quiet road in Essex, the world might never have known their names. In the months after Nicole Johnson's sentencing, the story fades from the front pages, but it never really leaves the minds of those who followed it closely. Local talk shows dissect every twist of the case. True crime forums dig through court documents, and social workers use it as a grim case study in the failures of oversight. What gnaws at so many is how preventable it all seemed. There were moments, dozens of them, where intervention might have changed everything. Teachers could have noticed the children were missing if they had been enrolled in school. Doctors might have raised alarms if they'd been brought in for checkups. Family members could have pushed harder when Nicole kept delaying visits. But none of those safety nets ever caught them. In interviews, Baltimore County officers speak cautiously about the night of July 28, 2021. Some choose their words carefully, sticking to procedure. Others are more candid, describing the moment they unzipped that suitcase as the single worst experience of their careers. "It's not just what we saw," one officer says, "it's what we felt. You don't forget the weight of that kind of wrongness. It changes how you look at people. It changes how you look at yourself. Even now, 3 years later, prosecutors remain haunted by how close this crime came to staying hidden forever. Had Nicole not been pulled over for speeding, the children might still be in that trunk, or worse, disposed of quietly, their fates never discovered. The community reaction has been fractured. Some have rallied around the surviving family members, donating to help with burial costs and memorials. Others have been openly critical, questioning how anyone could fail to notice 2 children disappearing from view. A small number focused their anger on the system itself, arguing that Maryland's child welfare agencies should have done more once the mother admitted she couldn't care for them. And then there are the details that still float unanswered in the public's mind. The 2 rose bears, pink and blue, with ribbons reading always and forever. Were they a twisted keepsake, a secret acknowledgement of guilt, or just an eerie coincidence? No one knows, and Nicole isn't talking. Her own statements remain a blend of self-pity, half-confession, and deflection. She frames herself as someone who tried to do the right thing, but was overwhelmed and left without help. But for many, those words ring hollow. They think of the injuries documented in the autopsies, the malnourishment, the year-long concealment of Joshin's body. They think of Larry's final request, to be laid down, and how it went unanswered until it was too late. For the detectives, the weight of those last words stays with them. One of them admits he thinks about it almost every night before sleep. The image of a small boy, tired and trusting, asking his guardian for rest, not knowing it would be his last. The case has also sparked quiet changes behind the scenes. Baltimore County law enforcement has increased training on recognizing signs of child abuse during unrelated stops. Child welfare agencies are re-examining how to track children who are no longer in a parent's care. But everyone involved knows those are bandages, not cures. In the end, what makes this story so chilling isn't just the crime, it's the silence that surrounded it. 2 children, gone for months and years, and no one raised an alarm loud enough to save them. And so, their story becomes more than a criminal case, it's a warning about the dangers of assuming someone else will speak up.